let's talk about the Karate Kid, like 5 movies. Let's talk about all 5 Karate Kid films. I do not have my iPad in front of me. It's charging over there because I was watching other YouTube videos on it like previously. So I will be my own timer. I will try to talk about these films as quickly and concisely as I possibly can. But if you are familiar with the Dan Richardson show, you will know that I'm not super concise. But I'll try my best. So, welcome. Today we'll be talking about the Karate Kid films. Comment below, let me know what is your favorite one. And let's get started. So, the original The Karate Kid came out back like 40 years ago in '84, and stars Ralph Macchio and Mr. Miyagi as his name is like Pat something, but Mr. Miyagi as they are the student and the master. So basically Daniel LaRusso is forced to move from like New Jersey because his mom has a computer job in California, so he's forced to move from New Jersey to sunny the Valley, California. That's where he lives. He lives in the Valley. And while there, he meets Elizabeth Shue, who would go on to be Marty McFly's love interest, Jennifer, in the final 2 Back to the Future movies, which is kind of funny. But Elizabeth Shue has a boyfriend named Johnny Lawrence, and he's not happy to see Daniel hitting on his girl. So he gets into a few fights with Daniel. Mr. Miyagi saves Daniel at one point, and it's like, hey, look, Mr. Kreese, it's not cool that your boys are picking on this scrawny, annoying little shit of a kid. It's not cool that they're doing that. So how about we stop that, and you wait till December for the All Valley tournament, and we see who wins there, which is what this image is from. And so now the race is on, or the fight is on, as Mr. Miyagi tries to teach Daniel LaRusso how to do karate. And I may have shown my hand a little bit, but I do not like Daniel LaRusso. Also, hope y'all liked the new haircut here. But I do not like Daniel LaRusso. I think he is annoying. He's a whiny little shitbag who is constantly like irritating and seemingly sometimes kind of ungrateful for the fact that Mr. Miyagi is trying to teach him some shit like karate or life lessons, and is constantly being like, if you're not going to be part of the granted he only says this like once in like the 3rd movie, but he's like, if you're not going to be part of the solution, then don't give me stop talking to me, okay? Like, dude, he's trying to help you. I understand that if he was just the perfect child, there would be no movie. But I feel like it's a combination of Daniel being a shit and Ralph Macchio himself, the actor, not being good. No offense to Ralph Macchio. He's very famous. He's more famous than I will ever be. But he was 20. He was 23 in when he made this film. And when I learned that, it rocked my world, because I was like, Daniel LaRusso's a liar and a piece of shit. Like, because he is. And I don't like Daniel at all. I love Mr. Miyagi. Mr. Miyagi is my favorite character. And when Cobra Kai comes around, when we review that later next year, because that's when the final part of the final season comes out for Cobra Kai, when we eventually talk about Cobra Kai, I will sing Johnny Lawrence's praises, because I actually like him. I will say they're both at fault. I don't really 100% agree with the theory that Daniel LaRusso is actually the bully, because I think they're both kind of terrible people, but Daniel LaRusso is like the main character of the movie, so he gets to win out at the end, and poor Johnny Lawrence is just humiliated and like forced down a dark road where he becomes a shitty dad and stuff, and that's not cool. But I love Mr. Miyagi. I love his backstory. I think it's very interesting. We'll talk about his backstory in 2. But I think he actually has a really fascinating backstory, and it's very interesting how patient he is with Daniel. And I think it's very much a thing that I think we can just carry into our lives. Now, I'm not a very patient person, but I think that what Mr. Miyagi tries to teach Daniel, and truthfully fails at teaching Daniel through no fault of his own, is, I think, very valuable lessons that you can probably try to apply to yourself. But yeah, another thing I will praise this film for is how Rocky it feels. It feels like Rocky, and apparently all 3 films were directed by the director of Rocky, which I did not realize until just recently when I looked at the back of this collection, that apparently the director of these films was the director of Rocky, which I did not realize at all. It explains sort of the weird correlation that I think these 2 films, these 2 series have, or at least this film has with connection to the original Rocky. I described the first 3 Karate Kid movies, or at least 1 and 3, as like sports films, me personally. Not only coming of age films, but sports films as well. The Karate Kid with Jaden Smith is very much a sports drama, but I think they did a good job at being like, okay, this is like Rocky for kids with a coming of age narrative instead of a underdog narrative, which are very similar indeed. But yeah, I do like this film, but I don't know, Daniel could have been better. Daniel sucks. Also, this has a bunch of bonus features on it that none of the other movies, except for maybe the Jaden Smith Karate Kid, has, which is slightly annoying. Next is Karate Kid 2, or Part 2. This is, I think, the best Karate Kid. This is my personal favorite, and I understand why people love the original. I do, but this one's about Miyagi, man. Miyagi, basically gets a letter from his, like, long since distant girlfriend back in Okinawa. He gets a letter from her being like, hey, your dad's about to die, and I think it's important for you to come and see him before he dies. So Mr. Miyagi packs up, and he brings Daniel along with him to Okinawa, the small island off the coast of Japan, or maybe under Japan, where Mr. Miyagi was born and raised. And Mr. Miyagi, while he has to deal with not only his dad dying and possibly the reigniting of a relationship that he once had back in like the 40s, he also now has to contend with Sato, who I think is probably the best villain of the franchise. Sato being his old rival. Miyagi and Sato were at one point friends, but due to the old flame, they became rivals. And in fact, the old flame was at one point promised to Sato. Mr. Miyagi didn't want that, but he had to move away and, of course, found his own wife, Mrs. Miyagi. And yeah, it's all very interesting. And while that happens in the background, we focus on Daniel's scrawny, annoying little ass as he somehow picks up a honey in Japan, in a foreign country, one day into being in Japan. And this begins a very unrealistic part, and my biggest complaint of the whole original Karate Kid trilogy, that he just somehow, and I'm not saving this to 3. I thought I was. I'm not saving this to 3. Somehow Daniel is able to pick up 3 fine-ass women in the matter of 24 hours, basically, in all the films. This is so unrealistic. I'm sorry. He picks up Ali Shu like day 1 of going to California. He picks up this girl whose name I don't know. Like a day, like 12 hours. 12 whole hours into being in Okinawa. And then, of course, they do wait a few days for him to meet Jennifer, the girl that he meets at the pottery store in the next film. And, like, I'm sorry, no. There's no way this annoying-ass kid would be able to get these 3 women in a row within like a year of each other. I'm sorry, that's unrealistic. I'm calling bullshit, movie. I know you're from the 80s. I know I got to give you some extension of disbelief. But no. No, 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 no. Okay, I don't, no. Okay, rant's over. But yeah, Daniel is annoying. I hate Daniel. He fights, Chosen. He fights Chosen, at the end of the film. He obviously wins because his name is in the movie. But no, Mr. Miyagi is a fascinating character, and I would love to see, granted, Netflix is probably listening to me say this, but I would love to see a Mr. Miyagi show explaining his backstory and like delving further into it. You know, what was him and Sato's relationship like? What does he do in between leaving Okinawa and then eventually meeting his wife? What's his experience in World War II like? I think it is a very interesting thing to do with the Mr. Miyagi character, and I think this film cements the fact that Mr. Miyagi is a better character than Daniel. You see just little things that the actor who plays him, Pat Morita, does with Mr. Miyagi throughout all the films, very subtly, hinting at this man is more complex than we would perhaps give him credit for. And yeah, I love Mr. Miyagi, and I think he's a very good and strong character, a very good, strong mentor, up there with the likes of Yoda. You know, like, he's great, and I love Mr. Miyagi. I love what it's able to do with the Japanese culture that it's sort of talking about. It feels very like progressive for its time. I don't really know a lot about how 80s fiction depicts Japan, but a part of me would think that some of it wouldn't necessarily age well. This ages surprisingly well, and I think that's possibly because of Mr. Miyagi's actor being like, hey, you got to do this right. And of course, I think the love and care that the original creators of the original trilogy had for this whole story. And yeah, it's great. I love Mr. Miyagi. I love this film. I love Sato as a villain and how interesting he is. I like that Chosen is just kind of the D-bag who doesn't understand what Sato eventually does. And like, I also kind of like Daniel. Like, he's very much annoying, but this is where he's the least annoying, because Daniel's just like, oh, this is like, Okinawa is so cool. Like, let's go, exploring and stuff like that. He's given almost very little to do. And I will say that's probably a complaint that certain people could have about too, is that it is very simplistic in its way. It's just, hey, the Karate Kid is in Okinawa now. Isn't that cool? And I can see where like a complaint of that could come from, but personally, as a fan of this film, as a lover of this trilogy, I don't know. I'd rather just want to see a 2-hour movie about good old Mr. Miyagi. That, give me that. Put that in front of my eyeballs, because Mr. Miyagi's great. And yeah, Mr. Miyagi is king. Actually, speaking of lengths, I didn't realize until I was like 19 when I got these films like in the set that apparently the original is like 2 hours long. Never realized that. Does not feel that way. And this doesn't feel like 2 hours long, so I think that's a compliment to both films. That being said, let's talk about Karate Kid 3. So, Karate Kid 3 is about them returning to America after leaving Japan. Daniel's mom has to go take care of their Uncle Louis, who was mentioned in the first film. Has to go take care of him because he caught some sort of bug. I forget what it is. But she has to go take care of him. So now Daniel has to live with Mr. Miyagi in the guest room that they were building in 2. Or that they built at the beginning of 2, because there's like a time jump between, like a 6-month time jump between the first film and the second film. And now Daniel is going to help Mr. Miyagi not only around the house, but also do the whole boot scoot boogie of opening up a bonsai tree store. Mr. Miyagi has this whole thing about bonsai trees, loving bonsai trees, and Daniel's like, hey, you have this passion. Why don't we just open up a store for bonsai trees? Teach people how to work with them and all this stuff. And Mr. Miyagi's like, okay, sounds cool. And they open up a bonsai tree. They want to make some pots for the bonsai tree. That's how he meets Jennifer, the girl that he unrealistically picks up in like 5 minutes. This is the most unrealistic. No offense to Elizabeth Shue or the other actress whose name I don't know, but Jennifer is like slightly prettier than the other girls that he's picked up, and it's like the most unrealistic like time span of him picking them up. Like he's picking up like 10s. He's picking up literal 10s, and he's a 5, if not less. No offense to. Okay, that was actually mean to say about Ralph Macchio. I'm sorry, Ralph Macchio. You're not a 5. You're a 6. I'm saying that as a 6. To be fair to Ralph Macchio. But all that being said, all those jokes being said, on the other side of this film, there is Kreese, the evil instructor from the first film who was teaching the Cobra Kai kids bad karate. He's like, after the end of the first Karate Kid and after the like sort of prologue sequence of the second Karate Kid where he punches some glass windows out of cars, making his knuckles bleed, and Mr. Miyagi obviously kind of shows him mercy and subsequently also kind of humiliates him and disgraces his entire dojo. Kreese is now a bum, not necessarily living on the streets, but he's definitely a bum. He cannot pay his bills, so he goes to meet his friend from Vietnam, whose name is Terry Silver, and he's like, hey, look, man, this Japanese guy and this little kid embarrassed me. I need your help taking care of them. And Terry's like, yeah, sure. He's obviously, he just snorted some 8-ball every time right before we see him. He's like, sure, man, I will absolutely help you annihilate these little wimps, Mr. Miyagi and Daniel LaRusso. I'll totally help you. And so good old Terry Silver makes Kreese go to like a tropical island, and it's like, hey, just chillax. I got this handled. So he tries to corrupt Daniel into fighting the Cobra Kai way, brutal, no hose bars, bone breaking action. And of course, Mr. Miyagi's like, dude, you can't compete in this new All Valley because it's been a year, so the All Valley's back on. You can't compete in the All Valley. You were doing that to save yourself, to protect yourself. That's what fighting is for. Fighting is for defense, not for competition. Daniel doesn't want any of that because he's a petulant little shit. And plus, there's this guy whose name I'm forgetting. We're just going to call him Steve. There's this guy, Steve, who's like the bad boy of karate. And he's like, no, dude, I want to fight you, Terry Silver has promised Steve a part of the franchise like money, to Cobra Kai, and he's like, dude, I'll work for your money, but I want 50%, not 25%. And Terry Silver's like, yeah, sure, I mean, I'm completely fine with you having that much, fine, whatever, cool. So they agree to do that, and they form a partnership, they form an alliance, all to humiliate and destroy Daniel LaRusso. And this film is surprisingly complicated, but also surprisingly very simplistic in its storytelling. This is the simplest, not the simplest of the whole franchise, but this feels very simple compared to the previous two films that were about honor and dignity and respect and how to be a man. This film, while it does have the brilliant tagline in the trailers of "It's time for the kid to become a man," that's what the title of this video is coming from. The Karate Kid becomes a karate man. I've always loved that. I've always laughed at that quote because I watched these films for the first time back in 2010 when I'm like 11 in elementary school, and I fell in love with these films. I also watched the Jaden Smith film from that year, all on Netflix. And yeah, like it's pretty fun. These are fun movies. But that being said, this film is very simplistic, and I think it is the weakest of the original 3 films. In the simple fact that Daniel is the most annoying that he's ever been. He is a petulant, like I said, a petulant little shit. I don't know. Like he wants to fight. He wants to compete in the All Valley. Mr. Miyagi says no, and he's like, okay, fine, cool. But then Steve shows up and keeps antagonizing him because Terry Silva is paying Steve off to antagonize him to get into the tournament, so Terry Silva can embarrass Daniel for Kreese, who wants to have Mr. Miyagi and Daniel like humiliated and defeated publicly. So this all ties into like Silver and Kreese's desire to break down the two guys. And it feels overly complicated, but it also feels very simplistic in its motivations as the villains. And this is why I think Kreese is the second weakest villain in this whole 5-film franchise. And I don't know, it just kind of stinks. This is a very simplistic film. It's a very just turn your brain off, don't really think about it too much type of film. Daniel sucks as not only a person, but also a martial artist. I mean, like, I can kind of forgive, like, in the first movie, Daniel kind of just doing this instead of doing this stuff. Also, by the way, I did take karate for, like, 3 years back when I was a teenager. So there is some karate things that like, bother me about these films, and also Cobra Kai. I won't bore you with the technical details, but like, I don't know, in these films, Ralph Macchio could have at least had like a stronger stance in terms of, how he blocks and punches people, like there's a way to do it, and then there's a way to do it lazily. And in a world now of Boy Kills Worlds and Raid films, and films influenced by Old Boy and Raid, these films stick out like a sore thumb in terms of martial art, and even the John Wick films. Forgive me for forgetting those. In a world of John Wicks and other films that are trying to push their stars into being actual martial arts, at least competent martial artists, the Karate Kid films stick out like a sore thumb, and that kind of sucks. But yeah, I don't like Daniel. I kind of don't really like part 3. And yeah, Mr. Miyagi deserved better. Kreese and Silva both suck as villains, and so does Steve. Steve sucks. Next, let's get to the next Karate Kid. So the next Karate Kid stars Hilary Swank and Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi, or as Hilary Swank and Mr. Miyagi, respectively. Mr. Miyagi now, Daniel has presumably gone off to college, so Mr. Miyagi's like, hey, I knew your dad back when I served in World War II. I knew your dad, so I will take care of Hilary Swank's character. So he does that, and Hilary Swank is involved in a bit of a tussle with the local, like, Junior Razzi-esque, Antifa-esque group of like army kids. Like, it's very strange. Michael Ironside, I almost called him John Henry Irons. Michael Ironside is like the head teacher of this, like I said, Junior Razzi-esque, Antifa Nazi-esque thing that just exists at Hilary Swank's school. And it's very strange. This film feels very Disney Channel in its way, because you have the old master trying to teach this like scrawny 17-year-old girl how to do karate. She goes to literally a monk temple just located somewhere in the middle of New England. She manages to find, with Mr. Miyagi's help, a like monk temple because she got suspended from school. So Mr. Miyagi's like, I'm going to take you to a temple. And she like befriends all the monks, and the monks are very like goofy. And like, it just feels very Disney Channel in its way. And that is, in my opinion, kind of weak on the part of the film. Like, I'm not expecting Shakespeare from any Karate Kid movie like ever. But I don't know. This just feels very much like a throw. And this got theatrically released. Like, I think it got released like 30 years ago to the day yesterday. Now, I'm filming this on Sunday. Y'all are watching this on Monday. So I think like Saturday was the 30th anniversary of this film coming out, The Next Karate Kid. And it's weird to think that this film came out in theaters and it has as nice of a production cost as it seemingly has. I mean, it feels very, like I said, like a Disney Channel movie, but it doesn't really look that bad. Like, it doesn't look as bad as you would think a Disney Channel movie would look. It just feels like a Disney Channel movie, you know, in the way that's written, in the way that's characterized. I will say Hilary Swank, on top of being a better actor just in her whole career than Ralph Macchio, she is at least a better character than Ralph Macchio. The writers of this film, who I'm going to assume are guys, because that's how it worked back then, understand that females mature faster than boys mature. So while Daniel LaRusso is like an 18-year-old petulant little shit throughout the original trilogy, because they all take place like within a year of each other, she is a 17-year-old, girl. She is a mature girl for, compared to Ralph Macchio. And while she does have the standard, like, little issues that, you would expect from a movie like this, she is, like I said, very mature for her age, and I do appreciate how they write her differently compared to Daniel, and how Mr. Miyagi deals with Hilary Swank in comparison to Daniel. They're different characters, and I appreciate those differences. And yeah, Mr. Miyagi is doing a good job. He's still the same character, but because this is a like Disney Channel movie, it feels like he has less to do. And yeah, Hilary Swank also takes care of a hawk named Angel. And like that's sort of like her like thing, like, these people in my life, these adults don't understand me, but you understand me. Angel, the hawk that I'm taking care of secretly, because it's just this is a Disney film. Like, it works, and I think it works in a way that like it's a Disney Channel movie. Like, my only problem is that the villains are weak. Now, Michael Ironside is a bit better than like Tara Silva and Kreese is, because it's Michael Ironside. He's like a really good actor, but I don't know, like, it feels very weird that this nondescript, I don't even know what they're supposed to be. Like, I think they're supposed to be like an extreme version of Junior Razzi. If you don't know what Junior Razzi is, basically Junior Razzi is like, I think, a big city thing, but from what I understand, it's basically like, hey, you want to get into the military? Well, this is kind of what being in the military is going to kind of be like for kids, that's what I think Junior Razzi is supposed to be. At least that's what I have understood from things like Last Man Standing, the Tim Allen thing. And this isn't exactly Junior Razzi, probably because a American-made movie for families probably doesn't really want to step on the toes of the military. But it feels like it's trying to comment on Junior Razzi's being bad, but it doesn't commit and it also has like nothing to say about Junior Razzi being bad. It's just, I mean, every high school has a fascist Antifa-esque like weird ass thing, right? Like, you know, it's just the boys club. Like every school has that, right? It feels very weird. And that's it for these four. As I put them back in this is actually pretty impressive. The thing I will say that kind of sucks is that this has, you know, the original three. Then it has, you know, the next Karate Kid, and the next Karate Kid and Karate Kid 3 are like packaged together. And then this collection this came out probably in 2005. This collection, which came out in 2014, does the same thing, except 2 and 3 are on the same disc, and Karate Kid 1 is like literally the same disc from this film, or from this set. And of course, you know, you just have your standard DVD release of the Jaden Smith, Jackie Chan Karate Kid. So let's talk about that. So what I'm going to dub as the new Karate Kid, because I will say, like, why didn't they just do that? Like, one, he isn't learning karate, he's learning Kung Fu. And the Kung Fu Kid is, I think, our actual Japanese, or Chinese, forgiving Chinese films from the 80s, at least according to Letterboxd. But, like, you could have just called this the new Karate Kid. And, I don't know, it just feels strange. But this one is about, Jaden Smith plays a kid named Dre with a D. Dre has to move to Singapore, China, with his mom, who plays like Cookie from Empire. They move to China for some reason. I'm assuming computers. They have to move to China because mom has a new job, and Jaden Smith is not happy about that. He wants to go home. He's very much homesick. There is some really nice, you know, fish out of water culture stuff that they do with this film, where he has to learn not only how to speak Chinese, which he doesn't do, but he has to like learn about Chinese culture. He falls in love with like a Chinese violinist, violinist, and it's very nice. This movie is somehow 20 minutes longer than the original. I think that's because it's trying to do all the culture shock stuff, which is fine. In the course of moving to Japan and going to the building that they live to, the apartment building, he runs into Jackie Chan. And Jackie Chan is, of course, the Mr. Miyagi of this film, named Mr. Han. And Jackie Chan is like, yeah, I'll help your mom with the hot water. And yeah, Jackie Chan's great. This is probably his best, or one of his best, English-speaking performances, in my opinion. The level of pathos and just honest-to-God earnestness that he's able to bring to this role, into this film, is absolutely impeccable. I think Jaden Smith, while he is a musician now, he starts off this decade as probably trying to be an actor like his dad, and then ends it in as a musician. While his beats are nice, I do think he had a possible future as a smaller version of his dad, because I do think that there's a lot of Will Smith in his film, in his performance as Dre. And yeah, it works. I think Jaden Smith is a good actor, and he's also a much better martial artist than Ralph Macchio. Not to dunk on him. This is the last time I swear that I'm dunking on Ralph Macchio. But even Jackie Chan said if Jaden Smith just stuck with doing this, he would have actually been a great, a great martial artist. So even Jackie Chan agrees with me. And yeah, this film I think is pretty good. It's not as good as the original, but I think it's good enough. The one problem I have with this film is that the villain, not only the kid who's supposed to be Johnny Lawrence and is kind of one note, we don't really get a lot with that kid, whatever his name is supposed to be. What is his name? I don't remember. But we don't really get a lot other than, like, he is kind of apparently a Chinese snob. Him and the violinist who Jaden Smith falls in love with are, like, I guess a part of the same, like, social class. It's implied that they're part of the same social class. She's supposed to be a violinist. He is a pianist. So it's, they're supposed to be, I guess, upper crust type of Chinese people, forgive me. And like that works, I guess, in a way. But we don't really get a lot with him, and I don't think we're ever going to get a Cobra Kai-esque TV show exploring his backstory like we did eventually with Johnny Lawrence. And even just on paper, Johnny Lawrence is a more interesting character than him. But then there's the, master, the Kreese stand-in. This guy just sucks. This guy, next to Terry Silver and Kreese, are probably the worst villains. And he's even more one note because he never, I think, speaks a word of English. He is literally his dialogue is entirely subtitled. And I'm sure, and there's a history between Mr. Han and him implied, I think. There's a history implied between the two characters. And I'm sure if this film had gotten a sequel, we probably would have learned more about Mr. Han's backstory. As it is now, I do think his backstory is pretty good. With him, instead of being a man who ran away from Okinawa in order to move to America, and then eventually joining the army, where his wife, unfortunately, while in an American internment camp, or relocation camp, unfortunately his wife has complications during birth, losing not only Mrs. Miyagi but Mr. Miyagi's son, which is a very tragic backstory. And I think Pat, forgive me, and I think Pat Morita plays that scene beautifully in the original Karate Kid. But I think Jackie Chan, all the same, plays that beautifully in this Karate Kid. He says that him and his wife, he wasn't paying attention. Him and his wife were arguing, and he says that he hopes that it was about something important. And that's how he loses his son and wife in this iteration of the story. And it's very powerful stuff. And Jackie Chan, while English is not his first language, and he's and I talked about this in my Rush Hour film reviews. He talked about how back in the Rush Hour days, he would just say things he didn't know what they meant. He just knew that Chris Tucker and Brett Ratner thought they were funny, so he's yeah, sure, I'll say that, and then he says it, not knowing what he's saying. While there is that language barrier with Jackie Chan, I still think this is one of his best, if not the number one best, English-speaking performance I've ever seen from the man. And there's a level of pathos and just sincerity that he has for this character, despite the fact that he's, at the time, only played it once. And that's how good of an actor Jackie Chan is. And I think Jaden Smith also as well did a good job. This film, my other complaint besides the one-note villains is that it's just really dark for no reason. This film, I don't know what it was inspired to be this. I don't know what inspired this film to have this tone. I genuinely don't know. But it just has a certain, darkness to it that is very surprising, especially compared to how kind of cheesy and corny the previous 4 films are. And, look, I love all these films in their own way. But I don't know. There's just a weird level of darkness that this film has that I just did not expect at all. All that being said, I love the Karate Kid films. If I had to rank them, number 5 would probably be the next Karate Kid. Number 4 would be Karate Kid 3. Number 3 would be The Karate Kid with Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan. Number 2 would be Karate Kid 1, the original. And then, of course, Karate Kid 2 would be number 1. And, yeah, so that's it. I would love to hear your ranking down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to hear, like I said, your ranking. Thank you for watching this video. I have quite a few things planned for August. I have like a comic book. I want to review some like comic book trades that I own. I have like a stack maybe like this big. I also have planned 5 or 4, because this is number 1, 4 more regularly scheduled Dan Richardson Show episodes planned. To sort of be like, hey, if I'm kind of late on a comic book review, I want to have something still in the week. So I want to have something in the week for you guys. Those videos will probably come out like every Wednesday on top of the comic book reviews that I want to do. I'm not becoming a comic book channel, but there's some comics that I want to talk about. And there's a certain series that I want to bring back that I did for like a year. Wink, wink. But yeah, look, I've said this twice now, but thank you so much for watching this video. It got surprisingly more heated than I thought it would. I've loved these films for years, and I'm happy that I got to talk about them. Like I said, when Cobra Kai officially ends, I will rewatch the whole damn thing and talk to you guys about that later. There's some topics that I want to touch on when it comes to Cobra Kai. So check in like a year, check the description for this video, because Cobra Kai review will be a sequel to this video. So there you go. And remember, the guy made specialty loves you very much. Please follow me on Letterboxd if you have not already. And as always, God bless y'all and have a lovely, lovely week.